T-minus 1 minute and counting. We're going to start on time for a change. How about that? You got 5 o'clock? All right. I would like to call this October 26th meeting of the City Council of Charleston to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Shealy.
Here.
Councilmember Saccharin. Councilmember Mitchell. Councilmember Brady.
Present.
Councilmember Gregory. Councilmember Waring. Councilmember Seekings. Councilmember Shade.
Present.
Councilmember Griffin. Councilmember Appel.
Here.
Councilmember Jackson. Mayor Tecklenburg.
Here. Now, if y'all would like to join us, Councilmember Shade will lead us in the invocation and pledge of allegiance.
So, Mr. Mayor, I was asked 2 things for my invocation: to keep it short and to also mention the Braves are playing in the World Series tonight.
Okay.
We'll pray for the Braves later. This is from an excerpt from the first letter of St. Peter. Finally, all of you, be of one mind, sympathetic, loving towards one another, compassionate, humble. Do not return evil for evil or insult for insult, but on the contrary, a blessing. Because to this you were called, that you might inherit a blessing. For whoever would love life and see good days must keep the tongue from evil and the lips from speaking deceit, must turn from evil and do good, seek peace and follow after it. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that invocation. I presume you're a namesake,
Yes.
Peter. Yes. Pretty good advice, I might share. And speaking of our timeliness, we got started on time. I wanted to share with council that I really enjoyed attending La Traviata the other night at the ballpark, the opera. It was terrific, a new organization, a new cultural arts organization, Halo, the Holy City Arts and Lyric Opera. So I mention that because they have a performance night at 7 o'clock, and y'all can make it if we get out of here on time. So, and I want to thank Councilmember Shealy. He's representing us up in Washington, D.C. He's meeting with the ambassador from Qatar, I think, this evening. Thank you, Councilmember Shealy, for doing that. And Councilmember Appel is joining us. He's representing us in Spain, I understand. Thank you both. So we have just a couple of presentations tonight before we get down to our regular business. And first up is to recognize a truly outstanding individual who recently passed in our community, Al Hollywood Meggett. If I may ask the family to come forward to the microphone, and I'd like to share this resolution with you this evening. I know we have Mrs. Meggett. I'm about to say Miss Hollywood, excuse me. That's right. Michelle, thank you for being with us. And Hollywood's son, Al, is with us. And Osei Chandler, a dear friend of the family. And Broadway is with us, who has helped Hollywood manage the incredible boxing club that I will mention. And so thank y'all for being with us this evening. So here's the resolution. Whereas the city of Charleston wishes to recognize one of its most distinguished citizens, Al Hollywood Meggett, and whereas Al Hollywood Meggett was born in New York City on February 28, 1931, and has been a resident of Charleston since 1979. He started the Charleston Boxing Club in 1983, which was used as a safe place for local kids to spend time. If there was ever a mentor, y'all, it was Hollywood. There, he served as a director, coach, friend, and counselor for hundreds of young people. And throughout his distinguished career, Hollywood collected a long list of honors and awards, including his recognition from the former mayor of Washington, D.C. for the 1986 and 87 Invitational Amateur Boxing Tournament. His receipt also of the A.J. Bowens and James Edwards Elementary School Boxing Club Award in 83 through 87, his recognition by the House of Prayer, Reverend Alma Dungy, our youth department. And whereas additionally, Hollywood received the Sigma Heroes Hall of Fame honor, the 1998 Coach of the Year distinction from the South Carolina Amateur Boxing Federation, the NAACP Trailblazer Award, the Community Service Award by Z93 Radio, the 2010 King of Boxing title by amateur coaches in South Carolina, the Bill Sharp Award, and a nomination for the Energizer Hall of Fame Award by the Carl Ruckner Foundation. He was truly an Energizer bunny, was he not? Whereas Al Hollywood Meggett was a loving and dedicated husband to his wife, Michelle, father to his son, Al, and daughters, Alicia and Tanya, and grandfather to granddaughters, Brianna, Misha, and Leah. And whereas Al Hollywood Meggett led a long and accomplished life, and his memory will undoubtedly serve as an inspiration for years to come. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, John J. Tecklenburg, Mayor of the City of Charleston, on behalf of our citizens and our City Council, extend to the members of his family and friends this expression of sincere regret for your loss. And no, we don't just hope, we know that you will be consoled by the memories of his fine life and achievement. Thank you so much for being with us. I'll present this to you, but I welcome you, Ms. Meggett or Osei or any family members, if you'd like to address us at this time.
On behalf of the family and the citizens of Charleston, I'd like to thank you for this proclamation. We all love Hollywood very much. We miss him. And knowing that the city has honored him this way will help us with our grief. Especially thank you to Council Members Sacron, Mitchell, and Dudley Gregory, and also to you, Mr. Mayor, and all your council members for giving us this proclamation. In Swahili, we say Asante Sana. Thank you very much.
Rosemary Singleton. I'm Darrell Singleton mom. Good afternoon. My name is Rosemary Singleton. I just want to say I've been with this boxing club from day one. My son Darrell Singleton, Mr. Hollywood trained him very well, and many other young men. And we are just so proud that he went through 3 generations of young men and women. So I just want to say thank you to the City Council for giving us this proclamation today in honor of Mr. Al Hollywood Meggett. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Singleton. Appreciate it. Council members Gregory, Mitchell, or Sacron, would y'all like to add any remarks? Councilmember Sacron.
Thank you, Mayor. I am proud to have the boxing ring in my neighborhood and district. And although I've never really met Mr. Meggett, I did have the opportunity to attend his service at Arthur Christopher a couple of weeks back. And I looked at all the pictures that really embody his life. And I saw pictures of him and Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, Sugar Ray Leonard, just to name a few. But more importantly, the pictures that I saw on that wall were pictures of the countless young people that he had a tremendous impact on their lives. And for 40 years, he played the role of father and mentor. And just hearing stories from El Jr. and from Broadway, he had a tremendous positive impact on those kids' lives. And as someone who works in public education, I have to say, without a doubt, he not only instilled hope, he saved lives. And that's particularly remarkable for someone in Charleston to be able to do that. To his family that is listening, and who's also here, I'm going to keep his spirit alive as we work with the city to bring that boxing gym back to the neighborhood, get it open and operating up in North Central. So you got my word, and it's nice to actually meet L Jr. and Broadway. You know where you can find me. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any other remarks?
Yes.
Councilmember
I just would like
Mitchell?
to say that I met Mr. Hollywood a long time ago, even when I came back and moved back to from New York, and I met him, and he wanted me to come and join the boxing club, but I tell him that day was over for me. I used to box in the Golden Glove in New York, and but I tell him I couldn't take it anymore, so I couldn't take the beating anymore. So he said, "Man, come on, we can train you to do more." I said, "No, I can't take it." So he was a generous individual, and he always cared about the young people, the young males and females in boxing. And he was a no-nonsense person when it comes to boxing. You don't play around in there when you come for business. And I used to always look at him, I said, "Mr. Hollywood, how long are you gonna do this?" I said, "I'm gonna do it till the end." And that's what he did. And God blessed him that he was able to keep doing it with his family beside him and pushing them on and never give him that, a problem and say, "Hey, it's time to stop." Because he wasn't going to stop anyway. He was going. So I commend him for doing that, and God blessed him, and God blessed the family for working with him and being with him in all the times he was there up and down. Because he still wanted to come back. He was ready to go back on King Street when it was open. He couldn't wait to get back there. So I know his spirit lies right there, and he'll be there with anyone who goes to carry on that legacy. So we need to have someone to pick up the staff and carry on that legacy for him and let him know that, hey, we are still here and still carrying on which we have started. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Gregory?
Yeah, my recent conversations with Hollywood all centered around making his dream a reality in terms of the boxing ring, the floor. We talked about everything. I just regret that he has not had an opportunity to be a part of it. But I think that as a city, we need to commit to making sure that we complete the gym. We make sure that we have the boxing ring that he wanted. And I think everyone here needs to know that there is a GoFundMe page. Okay, this is the commercial. There is a GoFundMe page, and we need to share that page with each other so that the community, and I'm sure the community wants to participate in making sure that we get the kind of funds to develop the kind of facility that he would be proud of. So all I could say is thank you for what he has done and contributed to this community. And as a council member, I'm committed to make sure that we do what he wants and we do what we talked about on the phone.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much again. We look forward to working with you. The boxing club, for those who don't know, was at a city building at 1099 King Street that needed substantial renovation. And that's been going on for the last couple of years, and it's finally finished and beautiful. And so they wanted to outfit the ring and all with brand new equipment. And that led to the GoFundMe page that Councilmember Gregory just mentioned. So yeah, we want to help them get the resources needed to get that finished. And 1099 King Street looks beautiful. So Broadway and family, we look forward to continuing that discussion and working with you. God bless you. Thank you for being with us tonight. What a great honor. Thank you. So next, we want to recognize the Charleston County School District Teacher of the Year candidates and winners, and thank them for doing all that they do to help the children throughout Charleston succeed, particularly during this challenging year and a half we've had with COVID. And I use this expression sometimes, these teachers, y'all, we all think about leaving the world a better place for our children. And their focus on leaving better children for our world. And at the end of the day, I think that's more important. So God bless you for the work that you do. I'm going to introduce, just call the names out of the finalists and the winners, and then call upon Councilmember Saccharin and maybe Dr. Postlethwaite to make some remarks, and any of the teachers who would like to as well. So the finalists are Vicki Platt. She's at the St. Andrews Math and Science Elementary, and she's a finalist this year, along with Katie Johnston, who's with the East Cooper Center for Advanced Studies, Candace Bear with Ladson Elementary, Abby Best with James B. Edwards Elementary, and the award winner is the Teacher of the Year is AJ Barnes with West Ashley High School. We also have with us this evening Dr. Jarita Postlethwaite. She's our superintendent, as you all know, and Erica Taylor. Thank you for being with us. She's our district chief of staff. So if I may now just call on Councilmember Saccharin, who also is an employee of the Charleston County School District, to make some remarks. Councilmember.
Thank you, Mayor. I think there's a theme here tonight with mentorship and heroes. We have folks come through council all the time, and we give them rounds of applause, and we often stand. And I have to say, I do have some comments, but the past 20 months in particular, you guys are nothing but heroes to me and my family and to the community. So I think it's apropos that we stand and give you all a round of applause. I'd like to thank Superintendent Postlethwaite and Chief of Staff Erica Taylor for being here tonight. And before I mentioned Teacher of the Year candidates and our Teacher of the Year, I think it's important that we recognize Superintendent Postlethwaite's leadership this past year, as always, but this past 20 months has been a challenge. I want to publicly thank you, Jarita, for your leadership, especially during the past 20 months. I know it hasn't been easy, and it's critically important to acknowledge the difficult decisions you and your board have had to make in the spirit of protecting all children, regardless of their zip code and regardless of how vocal their parents may or may not have been. So I think it's important that we acknowledge that leadership. We've had to deal with it here on council, and I know how difficult it's been. So I want to thank you for your leadership during these trying times. Teachers are arguably the most important members of our society. They care for our most precious resource, which is our children. They give our children purpose. They set them up for success as citizens of the world, and they inspire them to drive what they do and succeed in life. And as a father of 2 young children, both of whom attend public school, I can tell you for the past 20 months, and I keep using this 20 months as COVID, teachers have stepped up in ways that we can only imagine. One of the positive things that has come out of COVID in my mind is that we've all have a newfound appreciation for teachers, and particularly when they're asked to do virtual learning with our kids. I think parents across the district looked at each other and said, wow, this job ain't easy. And I think it's been a testament to leadership of the district, and a testament to our teachers having to go through this past 20 months. Truly remarkable passion and dedication. So I just want to say thank you for that. Lastly, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that many of the decisions we make here on council and on boards and governing bodies are unpopular, they're controversial, and sometimes there's not unanimous approval. And it's the teachers and it's the school-based staff that have to deal with angry parents, and they're at the front lines. And I just want to say again, I've seen it time and time again this past year, teachers holding steadfast to district policy in the face of angry parents. And I just want to say, for all those other members of society, I want to apologize. You all should not have had to deal with that. But as professionals, you stepped up. And I just want to say thank you for doing that. So thank you for that. Lastly, given the past 20 months we've all endured, I felt like it was important that we recognize you all tonight. And hopefully this is an ongoing thing. We do this annually. For Ms. Bear, Ms. Best, Ms. Johnson, Ms. Klatt, and of course, our Teacher of the Year. So our West Ashley council members, it's West Ashley High School, Mr. Barnes, who's our Teacher of the Year. Congratulations. Thank you all for your continued service to our students and families. So thank you.
So if I may repeat your names again, because I failed to ask you to stand up and be recognized. Vicky Platt, would you, there you are. Thank you. Katie Johnson. Katie. Thank you. Candace Bear. And Abby Best. Thank you. Now, the Teacher of the Year, AJ Barnes. You want to share some remarks with us? Would you like to speak on behalf of yourself and the other nominees, finalists?
Absolutely. City Council, Councilman Sacron, Mayor Tecklenburg, thank you. Thank you for not only recognizing us, but this is a recognition that honors our leadership at the district level, our building leadership, what our teachers are doing each and every day. I think most importantly, our wonderful kids and great parents that we have all throughout the district. We've referenced the last 20 months, and I'd be lying to you if I said it was anything short of what Councilman Sacron said. It was a challenge, but we're still in a challenge, and we're still in a fight. And it's something that we're needed now more than ever. And our job is now more important than ever as we emerge from this pandemic and deal with the social emotional challenges and trying to get our kids caught up for what we've missed. But we've fared, I believe, way better than a lot of other districts and a lot of other states. And that's part of your leadership. That's part of Dr. Postlewaite's leadership and the rest of our district officials and the hard work of our teachers. So it's an honor. And thank you. We're going to keep working. Thank you.
Keep up the good work. Dr. Postlewaite, would you like to make any remarks? You're welcome.
Just thank you. Thanks for everything. We really appreciate it. I think the teacher voice would be what you want to hear tonight. Thank you for honoring.
And Erica, always good to see you. Thank you for being with us tonight. Keep up the good work, y'all. So next up is our public hearings. We do have a few of those this evening, 12, but one deferred and 2 withdrawn. But since they were advertised, if you're here to speak on any of these matters, you're welcome to make public comments. We'll limit remarks to 2 minutes. This is not for citizens' participation period yet, but to specifically address any of these issues as they are presented. So normally Mr. Morgan presents these because they come from our planning department mostly, but tonight our first public hearing matter is a general matter regarding the proposed 2022 budget. So if anybody would like to be heard on our budget for next year, please come forward. I see Mr. Bryant making his way to the microphone. We had a presentation at our last meeting, kind of a preview of the budget, and it will come back to council at a future meeting, if not our next one, maybe sometime in November. Mr. Bryant.
Thank you. Everyone in the budget is deserving of every dime they're going to get. 18 million people in this country spend 50% of their income on mortgages and on rent. And so your staff may be dealing with that same situation. Alabama Associated Realtors versus the CDC had the Supreme Court rule in their favor to drop the moratorium. And so a lot of people in our community basically need rental assistance and they need help. So the budget process is a process where you have to do a couple of things. I think Dudley Gregg, you know what that is. Identify the policies and practice at issue, establish adversity, establish disparity, establish causation. We hope that this budget reflects that, but as being a recipient of the American Rescue Act money, CARES Act money, and other monies you received, we hope that that can be combined in that interest of those staff and employees who are going to be dealing with people who've been affected by this moratorium. Some may become at risk, homeless, and chronically homelessness existing in the country right now and in Charleston. So I think that the staff you have addressing those very challenging issues in this region, not just in Charleston. So hopefully you would take those points in consideration, and all the best.
Thank you, sir. Please come forward. State your name and address if you would.
Jerry Harris, 528 Cecilia Cove Drive. I stand to address the mayor and council on the municipal budget, particularly the police budget. I should, put into context, I served as chair of the Criminal Justice Reform Subcommittee of the Special Committee on Equity, Inclusion, and Racial Conciliation. I also am the mayor's appointee to the Police Citizens Advisory Committee. In our report, the commission recommended that the city council undertake its examination of the budget to identify priorities, potential savings, and reallocations. Listening to the chief's presentation to the ad hoc advisory committee, he specifically set as a priority continued implementation of the racial bias audit. Specifically, he also requested funds to support an independent assessment of the audit's implementation. He used the language, he is working toward evidence-based continued improvement, but nonetheless, he's trying to reimagine police services. That is the same language that we used in our report. I urge you to consider that as a former assistant state treasurer, county administrator, and director of budget and fiscal planning for a department in the state of New Jersey. I have some expertise in this area. I believe that you can achieve a triple bottom line, having a more effective police department, enhancing police services, but as importantly, increasing trust and transparency. Please support the police chief's request for dollars to support implementation of the recommendations, and specifically to accelerate the opportunity for us to receive an evaluation of what the department has done moving forward in implementing the report. Thank you.
And thank you for your service, Mr. Harris, on both of those committees. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Cashin Drole with Historic Charleston Foundation. As the city looks to identify its budget priorities for 2022, I'd be remiss if I didn't address you all tonight in support of the Department of Planning, Preservation, and Sustainability's budget request. There are three items within their budget requests that are priorities for the foundation as well, and I'd like to highlight those for y'all this evening. The first being staffing. The planning department has an incredibly hardworking and talented staff, but there is a need for additional staffing, particularly in the preservation realm, to ensure that the city's preservation ordinances are appropriately enforced and that the projects that are approved by the BAR are actually the ones that are built and delivered to the public realm. Second would be funding for a zoning overhaul. The city plan that you all approved a few weeks ago recommended, and the Dutch Dialogues report recommended, a zoning overhaul that would be elevation-based to steer development away from low-lying flood-prone areas. That is something that is incredibly progressive and something that we see the city needs to do, and there's funding that's needed to do this. Lastly, would be a rewrite of the downtown plan. The city has not rewritten the downtown plan since 1999. The peninsula has undergone pretty tremendous changes to demographics, economics, environmental changes, land use changes, and we really need a new vision for downtown. And that is also part of the planning department's budget request. So respectfully, I would urge council to support those critical items as you look to divvy up resources in 2022. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Would anybody else like to be heard on the budget matters?
And we did receive one comment online, Mr. Mayor. One person urged the city to include funding in next year's budget for tree planting in the Hanover Street right-of-way to mitigate the impact of the HVAC system for the renovated MLK pool. The 8-foot tall fencing around the units barely reached the platform it sat on. And they said that although the pool renovation was an excellent project and the improvements to Martin Park were appreciated, the elevation and size of the HVAC units created visual impact on the streetscape that was overwhelming. And those are all the comments we received.
Yeah, and I think that was a significant increase in equipment that had to be installed when we put the permanent cover in. So we should take a look at that. All right, so next I'll call on Mr. Morgan to come forward and we'll start presenting these other items for public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. We'll get the slides going here. Well, there's the first one. Here we go. Okay, so we have item E2, which is on Jack Primus Road, TMS 268-0000091134 and a portion of 133. It's a 81-acre tract. It's a request to rezone from diverse residential DR1 to light industrial. And the map is in your package and on the screen. The Planning Commission did review this and recommend its approval. I'll show you a few other slides here. Advances. I'm not getting the, here we go. Okay, it took a second. This is the application actually came in when we were still under the Century 5 plan, and it was reviewed by Planning Commission under the Century 5 plan. It showed as a job center, so the request would be in line with that. And actually, it had previously, a number of years ago, been industrially zoned as well. Advance here. I think we've got an aerial image. There is a good bit of wetland on the site, so the highland is somewhat limited. It had been envisioned for residential development, but now there is a different light industrial prospect for the property. And I think we have another image here. And that is all the information on the slides. And again, Planning Commission and staff recommended for approval of the request.
Would anyone like to be heard on this matter? Seeing none, it comes to council.
Move for approval.
Second. We have a motion to approve. Councilmember Griffin.
Mr. Morgan, what changes in density would this provide?
So again, the intended use is an industrial use. It does have a density of, with industrial, of 19.6 units an acre, which is comparable to the density it had under the DR category.
Plan is to be industrial use.
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct.
Any other questions? Councilmember Mitchell?
Yes, Mr. Morgan, did anyone in the area, over in that Kent Hart area, had any problem toward this, or did they went to the association in that area?
So it's my understanding that the ownership group did talk to the Jack Primus neighborhood about their thoughts on this. And it's been my understanding over the last few years that the Jack Primus area would prefer this site to be an industrial use rather than a residential use. And given the amount of wetlands and things like that, there's good buffering that would be required up against or that would be provided up against the neighborhood too. So they wouldn't see that directly from their neighborhood.
All right. Any other questions? Hearing number, this would just be for first reading. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Number 3.
Okay. And this is 25, 31, and 34 Wolf Street. TMS 459-0901-053, 460, 1202-001, 460, 08, 04, 064. 82 hundredths of an acre. It would be a rezoning from the light industrial to a planned unit development, the Medden Brothers PUD. This did get reviewed by Planning Commission and it was approved with conditions 6-0. I'll go through those in just a second. This is the heights in the area of the PUD, and these are not changing. It is a 8-story height district in that area. Then we have images that also show the surrounding zoning and images that show, here we go. some of the nearby hotels that have been approved in the area, and I can go into those in more detail if there are questions. Again, this came in under the old Century 5 plan. It is an urban core. In the new plan, it's also under a similar designation, so that's in line with both plans. These are the land uses on the site, which is essentially mixed use type uses on the site with a dedication of a 10-foot corridor for the low line on the west side of the property. And here's an aerial image of the property. More aerial images. You see that there's a good bit of intense development around it. It does include the building here, which is an old meat packing company that was converted to the Wolf Street Playhouse and is now vacant. And I'll go into some of the conditions from Planning Commission in just a second in reference to that. And then the applicant, I'm going to just zip through these. These are the PUD documents that you all have in front of you in your packages. We can certainly go through those. Let's see. Yeah. And so the Planning Commission did endorse this with the conditions that the hotel use meet all the criteria for a full service hotel. So this is one of those areas in the downtown that you can have a full service hotel that would be over 50 rooms in size, but it would have the requisite meeting space and restaurant space, things like that. And we felt it was important that this would be designated as the full service hotel if it were used for a hotel. And then if there's meeting or event space in the Wolf Street Playhouse building, the old meatpacking building, that would require construction of a mid-block crossing for the Low Country Low Line as per the council adopted low line design standards, so that it's easy for folks at the hotel to cross the street there. And then dedicating the 10-foot area on the western side of the parcel south of Wolf Street for the low line area, and the applicants had committed to that. And with those conditions, staff had recommended approval, and of course, Planning Commission did as well.
Would anyone from the public like to be heard on this matter?
Mr. Mayor, we have two citizens on the line who are joining virtually. Brian Hellman.
Brian Hellman, and I believe Stuart Medden. They are the applicants. If you'd like to make any remarks, you're welcome to.
Mayor, Brian Hellman here. Thank you very much, and members of council. I'll be extremely brief. I just want to say thank you for all the input you had. As you know, Mayor Tecklenburg, the whole impetus behind this 10-foot strip of low line of land to connect the low line from Wolf Street south was a request that you had made, and it was a difficult 10 feet of an 80-foot wide property. But with the help of planning staff, we were able to come up with, I think, a very good plan here, and we really appreciate everyone's help and the opportunity to work out something that will be beneficial for everyone involved, including everybody who will use the low line to get up and down the peninsula. So thank you.
I was going to add my thanks to Brian's, especially to the mayor and the planning staff. We're personally very excited about the low line and know how great it's going to be for Charleston. And we're happy that we can participate in it. So thank you all very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you for being with us.
So I move for approval, Mr. Mayor.
Second. Would anyone else like to be heard?
No.
Hearing none, it comes to council.
I think we had, I met with them, and it's that the community and everyone wanted, they've been along with it, and they have changed a lot of things in that plan when it first started. And so I believe I'm moving for approval for it.
We have a motion to approve. Did we get a second?
I'll second.
We got a second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember
I was just
Jackson.
wondering if Mr. Morgan or someone could speak to, is there plan for any workforce housing or any sort of housing income subsidies to benefit people that could potentially take advantage of living and working along the low line?
I'll let the applicant, if they want to comment on this further, but of course the accommodations overlay makes reference to that with a full service hotel also, but I'll let the applicants speak to that issue as well.
Council member, in this regard, the strip of land that we're giving here is a pretty substantial portion of our property. So the community benefit as opposed to a housing benefit is actually a strip that's about 12% of the land that comprises these lots. So that we thought was a pretty substantial benefit that wouldn't just benefit people that are living there, but also people that are using it, people like me who travel by bike from east of the Cooper to downtown on a regular basis. So everyone will benefit, I think, in that regard. So we hope that'll help.
All right. Any other questions? And I would add to his comment that right across the street, next to the Playhouse, is where the rail right-of-way ended. And so when you cross Wolf Street, there was no public right-of-way. There was no rail. The railway apparently years ago had sold the property, and the Medden family came into its ownership. So it was really critical in order to make the low line complete that this block and the next block that we had the cooperation of private property owners. Councilmember Seekins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly to echo on sort of some of the comments. I think it's important just to note here what happens when you have a local development team that's been here for generations, works with our planning department, gives back to the community in a big way. I mean, it's no small event that they gave up a good bit of their developable property to give it back to us in the community for public use. And so I commend everybody. I know the staff worked really hard on this. I commend the development team, and I think this will be a really good project that's consistent with what's going on there, but goes the extra step by giving us that property to make the low line a reality, which is something I think everyone on this council is looking forward to. So I enthusiastically am going to vote in favor of this. Thank you.
Any other comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Number 4 is deferred. It's regarding a rezoning at 228 President Street. Did anyone come to speak on this matter? If not, I think we'll just move along since it's deferred, Christopher. So next up would be number 5.
All right, and that one is on the screen now. This is actually 2 side-by-side requests, E5 and E6. So I'll read the tax map
We'll take
numbers.
them together. That'd be great.
It's on King Street, 46008020015 and 016. It's a 1/10 of an acre. The first request is a change along King Street's frontage from 4-story Old City Height District to 5-story Old City Height District. And if you see the image here, there are 2 crosshatched areas, and those are the areas, really it's a very small portion of the property, but those are the frontages on King Street that would be allowed to go from 4 to 5 stories. The area that's at the terminated end of Columbus Street would not go up to 5 stories. It would stay at 4. It's an 80-foot wide gap there. And that was recommended by the Planning Commission 5-1. And then adjoining that is property or height district change on the larger portion of the site, which is 4600802 102 103 104 and a portion of 105 106 and 098, about 1.6 acres. It's a request to rezone from the 6-story Old City Height District to the 7-story district. And it is shown on the image. Oops, too far. It is shown in the image here in the crosshatched area in pink. And that would be a change again from the 6-story to 7-story Old City Height District. That was endorsed by Planning Commission 5-1. And just a few images here. It again came in under the old Century 5 plan. It's in the urban core as it is in the new plan. So that was in conformance. Here's some aerial images of the site. And I think you all know it well on Upper King Street. Let's see if this will advance. Here we go. Going through here, scenes of King Street. And then the applicant provided a few slides. I know that they are here to speak. So I'll just leave these kind of in queue and let them speak on this, on these 2 items when that portion of the discussion comes up.
All right. Would the applicant like to make a comment? Please come forward. Mr. Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm Ron Owens, CEO of Evening Post Industries, the owner of the subject properties. I'm also on the board of the Low Line, so thank you for your support. We're partnering with Liberty, which is a family-owned business, to own, operate, and develop a continuing care retirement community on this site. So thank you for giving us a few minutes to tell you a little bit about that. We won't take long. You have a long agenda. Liberty operates senior living communities throughout the Southeast, and here in Charleston, they own and operate South Bay and Mount Pleasant, and are developing a project on Spring Street, a skilled care. Continuing Care Retirement Community is a healthcare services business that offers a full gamut of services from rehabilitation therapy to assisted living, memory care, fitness, dining, and independent living. We've been working on this project for 4 years and engaged significantly with council members, the mayor and the city staff, and had tremendous support from the community for this project. We really, being long-term owners of this site, 70+ years, we wanted to do the right thing for the city. And we think this type of use is a great use for the area. This is an operating business that's going to provide significant jobs, over 60+ jobs. We make it a priority to hire from the neighborhood and surrounding communities, and to give people the opportunity to move from entry-level jobs up through our system. So I think you've seen our history here, and Liberty has the same view and the same process. So we're not developers from out of town. We're operators and owners of businesses, and we've selected our partner, Liberty, to do the same thing. So we hope you will support us. We've got tremendous support from Planning Commission, from the city staff, and from our neighbors up and down King Street. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Gow?
City Council, Richard Gow with LS3P. Thank you for letting us speak. We had very good support from the neighborhood and from Planning Commission on this parcel and this request for rezoning.
And Mr. Gow, could you speak into the mic just a little bit more? Thank you.
Thank you. So this is the site now that it's caught up. And I wanted you to realize that this is a very dense part of the city. We're working very diligently for King Street to be outstanding and to hide the parts of a big project to the interior of the property. This is a map showing where the parcel is in the densest part of the city. As Mr. Morgan said, you should note that there is 7 stories to the south and to the north of this parcel and 8. And then this is a diagram showing that we could build a lot more than we're intending to build. And we're putting the mass and the height where it would be the most effective, where you could see it down the end of Columbus Street and not from the neighborhoods. There's plenty of property to the south and to the west that buffer these taller spaces from the neighborhood. So we think it's an effective design, and we've had great support from the neighbors. You can see in detail, the red is where we're looking from 4 to 5, and the orange is where we're asking to go from 6 to 7. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would anyone like to be heard on this matter? Yes, sir. Please come forward.
Anthony G. Bryant. I provided notice to John Barnwell, the Evening Post Industries, and recently, in terms of whether or not his institution has a conflict in terms of his promotion, either through his paper in terms of pro-growth development in the area. And then those who are in opposition to pro-growth in the area via the Chamber of Commerce, which is a third-party organization, can they conduct what you call an indirect initiative against people who are against them and the development for the past 20 years in that area? From the time of the Carl Charleston Arena to now, to the point where discoveries can be done on people, right? To the point where Homeland Security, ICE, 31 Hopkins Plaza, 6th floor, Baltimore, Maryland, 21201, in which that notice wasn't even given back to me, right, at all. So therefore, I had to place my name, Bryant versus the Evening Post Industries, on 85 Broad Street in the district, now appealed to the 4th Circuit Court of Appeals.
Thank you, sir. Would anyone else like to be heard on this matter?
And Mr. Mayor, we received a letter from the Preservation Society. They said that they had been closely involved in the review of the project and was disappointed to see the request. The site was located in a highly sensitive architectural environment between the King Street corridor and Cannon-Borough-Elliott-Borough neighborhood. And they felt the request to upzone from 4 and 6 to 5 and 7 stories on the site did not meet the intent of the ordinance and would be detrimental to the character of the adjacent small-scale residential neighborhood in King Street streetscape. And they asked for council to deny the request.
Seeing no other folks coming forward, the matter comes to council. Councilmember Mitchell.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, all these things that are in the district I represent, and I have met with the developers and over a period of time, and I discussed what I was looking for in that particular community. You know, we had a little fight a little bit, but then we got through it. And also with the neighborhood association, they were back and forth to the neighborhood association till the neighborhood association was satisfied with what was going there. So they voted for that. They are satisfied with it. That's why you're not hearing anything from the neighborhood association, Mr. Daly Borough, Cannon-Borough Association. So with that in mind, I was going to vote to approve it because we have done a lot in that area. They looked at it a lot in the area. It just didn't happen in one day. They were going back and forth to the neighborhood association to make sure. Neighborhood association wanted to make sure that this was something right to put in that community. And so they're satisfied with it. So I have met with them period of time, a lot of time in the office, back and forth. And I was looking for some other things, but at the time it couldn't be worked out, but we are working on some other things, even looking at some other things that we can put affordable housing somewhere else. We're going to look at that very seriously. So I'll be working with them on that. So right now I'm voting for approval.
All right, I'm reading that as a motion to approve items 5 and 6. And we got a second? Yeah, Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually think this is actually pretty good diverse housing. It's all senior housing. It kind of left the peninsula for a while, you know, the Frankie Home and others. Bringing seniors back to King Street is actually pretty new, frankly. So that's another reason I'm going to support this one right here. I actually think it's a good project.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Jackson.
Yes, thank you. I would just appreciate some explanation of the Planning Commission recommends approval of an amended application in which a middle segment spanning 80 feet is not included in the 5-story rezoning request. Is that what is in front of us to approve, or is there?
Correct. That's what Planning Commission sent forward to you, and that's what the applicant is showing on this image, for example. It's the 2 areas that are in pink along King Street that have the change from the 4 to 5 stories, but the center area stays at 4 stories. That is in line with what the Planning Commission recommended. Okay, maybe I need to turn it up like this.
Yeah, I just thought because it is a change that we should make that point to the public, whoever is, you know, paying attention to this. So.
Right. And we need to pay attention too. So let me ask Councilmember Mitchell to be clear that your motion is consistent with that their 80-foot segment in the middle is not included in the 5-story zoning request, as stated here.
Well, I'm voting for whatever they have.
Yeah.
That the Planning Commission have that they approve, and that's what I'm voting for. That's why I'm making the motion for.
All right. Gotcha. That's what we thought.
That's what I said.
Yeah. Any further?
5 and 6 together.
We're taking 5 and 6 together. Correct. Any further questions or discussion? Councilmember Shade.
Mr. Morgan, just for points of clarification,
yes, sir.
This is more my curiosity than anything else. So the request is to increase from on application number 5 from 4 to 5 stories. And then on application number 6 is going from 6 to 7. Why the discrepancy?
So it's two different areas of the site.
I got that.
The first 4 to 5 is at the frontage along King Street for a narrow depth. And then the second part is for the rear portion of the site.
And that's how our zoning laws are designed with the location of these properties. They have different height requirements.
Correct.
Okay.
The height districts are drawn in such a way from an urban design standpoint, for instance, that King Street isn't as overwhelmed with the bigger buildings. So there's the greater heights are set back further, so you don't notice them from the King Street as you're walking along.
I just wanted to make sure everybody was clear on the difference between these two height requirements.
Yes,
Thank you.
Correct. All right. Any further questions, comments? All in favor, please say aye. Any?
Aye.
The ayes have it. The next item is number 7, Mr. Morgan.
Okay, wait for the slides to
That
catch up
did
here.
help, by
Here,
the way,
oops.
when you were speaking and right in the microphone.
Okay, I've got it more directly.
That's good.
Okay, there we go. Okay. Yes. So E7 is in the east central area of the peninsula. It's parcel 45901040011. It's 0.6 of an acre. And it's a request to go from general business GB to the Upper Peninsula UP district, and also from the existing 5-story Old City Height district to the 4 through 12-story Old City Height district. And that is a height district that goes in line with the UP. The whole purpose of the UP is that you earn points through incentives. So it's integral to have the 412 height district be on all the UP designated parcels. This was reviewed by the Planning Commission and was recommended for approval. Stewart Street is just off of Morrison Drive, just south of Yuji. It's property that's owned by the ILA Local 1422A, and it is adjacent to their pension fund offices that front on Morrison Drive that are already zoned into the Upper Peninsula zoning. And actually, the upper part, currently this is a parking lot for Taco Boy. And the upper part of the parking lot already is also in the UP. It was just, this part was left out due to frontage issues and it not having frontage on UG or on Morrison. We've got some other images here. Let's see, there we go, zipping. It's in our Century 5 plan as one of the urban core sites, and that is echoed with the new plan. Let's see, and here's an aerial. You see the parking lot there. And we have the view of it from Stewart Street. It's fenced off from Stewart Street. Here's another view of Stewart Street and another view. Okay, not sure, oops. Okay, it's drawn a blank on this one for whatever reason. Let's see if we get this one to come in here. Sorry about that. Anyway, I think you get the sense of where it is, and the maps are in front of you as well. And so staff and Planning Commission recommended approval of the request.
Great. Would anyone like to be heard on this matter? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is Steve Ramos. I'm an architect with LS3P, and I'm representing the International Longshoremen's Association. They are the owners of this property. And Mr. Morgan, if you could go back to the zoning map. As Mr. Morgan pointed out, there are some parcels to the east that are also owned by the pension fund and the ILA. So they kind of all run together. And they would like to rezone the GB parcel to UP. Stewart Street has a lot of potential right now. It's a little chopped up. And I think zoning this to UP allows for a lot of great things to happen. As you all know, the UP zoning is an incentive-based district. So you have to earn things like density and height. And by doing so, the incentives are things that are good for the city as well as the environment. For example, there are sustainable initiatives. And so I think this change would simply be in line with a lot of the other great things that are happening in this area. And for those reasons, we ask for your approval.
Approval.
Motion to approve. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Numbers 8 and number 9 regarding 518 East Bay Street have been withdrawn by the applicant, but they were advertised. Would anyone like to comment on 518 East Bay Street?
Mayor, we did receive one comment. The Preservation Society submitted a letter that said they stood for the integrity of the height districts as drawn, which were designed to be responsive and compatible with the existing context. The tallest building on East Bay and Calhoun was only 5 stories. Further reinforcing 6 stories was inappropriate for the context. Given the detrimental impact additional height would have on the character of the context, they urged City Council to deny the request. And those were all the comments we received.
Great. All right, so we'll move right along to number 10. Oh,
Was there
Councilmember
a
Griffin.
reason why these items were withdrawn after getting approval from the planning commission?
The applicant is going to kind of rework the applications and shift them slightly with some property exchanges that are pending.
Okay, so after they got their recommendations back from planning commission, they're gonna make some changes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you
They'll
so
have to
much.
go back to planning
Thank you.
commission and to council, but I think they plan to. All right, number 10.
Okay, this is an ordinance amendment. This is in reference to the sidewalk cafe regulations, which of course, you know, the city's had for a number of years. And during the whole COVID pandemic, in an effort to give the restaurants in our community more of an opportunity to serve patrons, we had relaxed a lot of these standards, and you saw a lot of sidewalk cafes develop when people had very limited capacities in their businesses. Now, as these emergency orders are ending in January, we are working on a slight improvement, we think, to these ordinances that give a little bit more flexibility and allow sidewalk dining in more places than they had been pre-pandemic. So we're hopeful that they will help our city streetscape and our restaurants thrive and create exciting opportunities for folks to dine outside. There's slight differences in the amount of space that is needed for the outdoor dining, and that should make more opportunities throughout the downtown.
Great, thank you. Would anyone like to be heard on this matter? Seeing none, it comes to council.
So moved.
We have a motion to approve in a second. Any questions? And Mr. Morgan, this essentially codifies what we have done during COVID for the long term, correct?
Right. It might be a little bit more stringent on a couple of instances in reference to right-of-way area available for pedestrians, just for safety purposes, but it's definitely more flexible than the ordinances had been pre-COVID.
Great, thank you.
Could you give me an example?
Mhm.
Could you give me an example of?
So now you can, the street width can go down to 10 feet to have on-street dining, and it had been wider, and it can go down as narrow as
No, some of those instances where it won't work.
It's a little bit tougher when you've got traffic moving directly adjacent to the curb, because that is a little bit more of a safety risk. If there's on-street parking, there's a little bit more flexibility. If there's not on-street parking and traffic is moving immediately adjacent to the curb, there's a little bit more stringency, but it still is more easily accommodated than the previous ordinance was pre-pandemic.
Is Spring and King one of those areas?
It applies throughout the downtown area where the sidewalk dining is allowed. It's basically a width-based criteria.
But both King and Spring have on-street parking.
Right.
Yeah.
There's some portions of King that don't, but I know that there's certain situations. I believe there's a situation on Upper King near Spring where there was a variance given pre-pandemic, I believe. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Seekings.
Well, while we're asking, will these adjustments and the slight restrictions that have been put out there cause anybody who during the pandemic moved to outdoor dining to have to take their operation out of service?
There may be some locations that to meet the criteria on this, that will not work because of the need to have adequate sidewalk width and safety distance from the street, things like that. There may be some locations.
Mr. Mayor, if I may. This is Robert Summerfield. So Councilman, so anyone who was approved under the temporary ordinance will continue in their current operation, even if they don't satisfy this new requirement until January, when the temporary ordinance ends. So we're working with everyone who's not compliant with what would be the permanent ordinance right now, so that they can make those modifications before their current approval ends in January.
Can I make a request, please? Before we take this to second and third reading, can we get a list from y'all of those who might be affected negatively by this change?
Yes, sir. We can get that.
Yes, good idea.
That's really the question I was
Yes,
asking.
we will.
Thanks, Councilman.
We will insist upon that before we give it second reading.
Great, thank
I
you.
understand Councilmember Pell has his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to everyone that's played a role in moving this measure forward. And I would just point out that, you know, I had the opportunity to visit Barcelona and a town called San Sebastian in northern Spain. And you want to talk about outdoor dining in every place imaginable. I've seen about everything you can imagine, and it's just incredible. It brings life and energy and vibrancy to streets. It's such a wonderful thing when it works. And I would just encourage us to continue to have an open mind about you know, some flexibility to allow as many folks the opportunity to do this as it can be safely accommodated, because it truly is a win-win for both the restaurants and the vibrancy of the city. So I think it's really something exciting that we ought to keep pursuing and continuing to study and move forward. So thanks, y'all.
Well, thank you. Well, Charleston is often described as a very European city, but unfortunately, when we laid out the streets, we didn't make the right of ways as wide as many of those European cities that we visited. We wish we had wider sidewalks and could do more, but we will get that list and make sure we address those who might be impacted. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Number 11.
Okay. Get the slides to advance here. Okay. This is E11, and it's an ordinance to amend the site regulations in the zoning ordinance that deal with one-family attached dwellings in the GB zone district. And this is a situation that will help us with redevelopment, where we've got some of these declined shopping centers that have extra large parking lots that are already zoned GB, that could be residential. And there is already a location along Folly Road that is looking at one of these. And there are other opportunities in the Sam Rittenberg corridor where we've got larger parking lots than are really needed. There could be new single-family attached dwellings. GB has always allowed residential dwellings, but we haven't really had a specific ordinance that dealt with the layout of one-family attached dwellings and flexibility for street design. These are based on some design standards that we've seen in Mount Pleasant with townhouses that we think have worked well. We've had a good bit of input from an urban design standpoint on this, and think this will allow us to have much better designed single-family attached dwellings in the GB district. This was reviewed by Planning Commission and recommended for approval as well.
All right. Would anyone like to be heard on this matter? Seeing none, it comes to council.
Move for approval.
A motion to approve in a second. Councilmember Shade.
Sorry, you mentioned some properties on San Rittenberg
Yes,
that may
sir.
be impacted. Which properties would those be? Do you know?
Anything that would be zone GB, that if we had a development plan for that site that involved single-family attached dwellings, it makes it a little bit easier to make those work on a GB property.
Thanks.
Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Morgan. Yeah, I'm sure I'm sounding like a broken record, but I do feel like this is a prime example of what we can be doing proactively to incentivize what the industry is now calling missing middle housing opportunities. It means that we don't have to subsidize properties that will be more affordable because they're in smaller spaces. They're in places that are very attractive to younger families and startup people who want to live in a community that they can walk around and enjoy their own neighborhoods. So I think as much as we do this, we're going to see that kind of vibrancy that Councilmember Appel is experiencing in Barcelona, and I envy him totally for being there. We need to make our urban centers as walkable, livable, and enjoyable as absolutely possible. So I'm a big proponent of doing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. And lastly, number 12.
Mr. Mayor, there we go. E12 is at 2029 Ashley River Road. It's a recent annexation. It's a 1/4 acre. The zoning request would be for SR1. It was R4 in Charleston County and would be able to meet our SR1 standards. Planning Commission recommended approval 7-0 on this.
Would anyone like to be heard on this matter?
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. That ends our public hearings. Next, we have approval of our city council minutes from September 28th. Can I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Any changes, additions, corrections? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next up is our citizens participation period. Madam Clerk will call the names and we'll keep on our track of 2 minutes apiece if that's suitable to everyone.
Anthony Bryant.
When you come forward, please state your name and address if you would, please.
Anthony G. Bryan, according to the Supreme Court of the United States in protest, 2123 Cortland Avenue, Charles, South Carolina, 29403, my two great parents. At their address, their second son received a letter from the U.S. Court of Appeals. Enclosed in this letter, Patricia Connor, the clerk for the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals in my protest, was Homeland Security. And I filed a 1978 IG complaint regarding the arrests and bookings within low to moderate income census tracts to the whole country. That's why I filed Brian Executive Office for the U.S. Attorney, because I shared an auction block with every Black man in America who could not read at a 3rd grade level from 1970 to 2021, who occupy state and federal prisons. That is my protest. I shared an auction block with them. So I don't make no apology for sharing an auction block with people. So how can you not receive a historical causation report to deal with the causation of the established disparity, established harm, and how can you clearly identify policies and programs at issue if you don't deal with that report or recommendation that Brother Gregory promoted of his generation? The best generation we ever had to come out of the Black community was his generation, Keith Waring and Robert Mitchell. The rest of us are subjected to 86 crime bill, 94 crime bill. We all share the auction block together. So I want you to understand clearly that that fight's real.
Thank you, sir.
Sarah Fitzellen.
Sorry, I'm a little bit shorter. My name is Sarah Fitzellen. You want my address, right?
Yes, ma'am.
3523 Agape Court in Ladson. I am a member of CAJM. And first, I'm going to ask the members of CAJM that are here today supporting my speech to stand. I rise to speak today regarding the status of the racial bias audit of the Charleston Police Department. I am asking first that council put priority focus back on this audit. The council needs to thoroughly review the current status and assess what it will take to significantly reduce the unacceptable level of racial disparities in stops, arrests, and use of force in the city. And perhaps most importantly, we were promised well over a year ago that CPD would engage an independent third party to provide this necessary review. This is the help that CPD clearly needs, yet still there is no obvious plan. I ask that you proceed immediately to bring in a third-party independent reviewer for the audit's implementation. The implementation of the audit is critically behind. I have come here tonight to ask council, what is the status of a third-party review? Has the council budgeted the necessary funding it'll take to have an independent third party provide that review? And I ask that this council make sure that this is included in your 2022 budget. It is clear that if we do not quickly reinvigorate our efforts on this audit and bring in the third-party expertise, Charleston risks fully squandering the taxpayers' payment that we made for this audit. And more importantly, we risk remaining stuck as a community rife with huge racial disparities. That's not somewhere we want to live.
Thank you.
Next is Reverend Armstrong.
Well, good evening. I am Reverend Cecilia D. Armstrong, the Associate Pastor at St. James Presbyterian Church on James Island. My address is 602 McLernan Trace on Johns Island. And I am also co-president for the Charleston Area Justice Ministry. We're deeply disturbed about the lack of progress and the lack of making the 2019 audit for racial bias a priority. Now, the key purpose of the audit was to uncover seemingly reduce the racial disparities in police stops, arrests, and overall interactions with Black people. Well, you have already heard all of the unfair, violent, and selective policing horror stories for years that drove the demand for this audit in the first place. So the audit results confirmed these disparities and outed other indiscretions. Now, the mayor, the council, the chief publicly committed to the recommendations, and council made a bold commitment to honestly reckon with our history of racism as to create a community of equity and justice for all. Now, while some progress has been made on policy, I want to say thank you very much for that. There's policy that needs to be changed, that this has not been made on the key purpose of the audit, to reduce and eventually eliminate the racial disparities. CPD's own data show no reductions in racial disparities for stops, arrests, or use of force. We've not heard from CPD of any plans to address these persistent disparities. The promised independent review of the audit's implementation hasn't happened. We have yet to see a written report. Does this feel a little shameful? Well, what does it tell our community? In my opinion, it tells the community that the city is not serious about the audit and in reducing disparities. So this is a clarion call on the council and public safety to seriously engage on the status and implementation of the audit. We need to review it. May I finish just?
Please finish up.
We need to review outcomes, not just activities against objectives. We need to ensure the robust action plans to actually reduce racial disparities, to honestly reckon with our history of racism. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Amy Harrod. Amy Harrod. Marcus McDonald.
Don't see him here this evening.
And he may be online. If you're online, if you could press *6. Marcus McDonald.
Hey, I'm outside the camera.
I think you're breaking up. Marcus McDonald, are you on the phone? All right. Tony Daniel, if you're on the line, if you could press *6.
Mr. Daniels.
How we
good
doing,
evening.
Mayor? Here we go again. A year of this. All right, I'm a
Well-
victim of segregation, setting apart or separation of people and things from the main body group. My little area of the neighborhood has been segregated from the rich, affluent other area that has no traffic. I have all the traffic. Now, last time I was here with my dear old daddy, Ross Appel said, I didn't say that you lost your mind. Yeah, he did. Got the email, sent it to you. Happened on 4/20/21 at 2:33 p.m. He also said, I accuse you of violating the rules of professional responsibility. I did. He has to tell the truth. He called trees in the middle of the road and a fence open. Did it on city council. Not allowed to do that. What really got me upset was when I went to look for that email, I saw the other email with several other members from a guy in my neighborhood who wrote to them and said, how would you feel if this was your neighborhood? So I will ask you, how would you feel if this was your neighborhood? You left town to go serve your country, serve the citizens of Charleston, and came back and found your roads were blocked, your father couldn't get out of his driveway, property values diminished, and you're supporting it, and it's all illegal. Title 57, a court order or a vote by city council within compliance of in the best interest of all. And that hadn't happened. So what do you do when you don't have the legal remedy? You vilify the other person. None of y'all know me. Ross Appel does not know me, never met me, doesn't know my family, doesn't know my history. But man, you ought to see the things that have been written about me from my neighbors. Absolutely horrible, horrible. That's what you do. You vilify the other guy. Now, are y'all willing to stand for that? That's what I want to know. How many of you are going to allow this injustice to take place? It is illegal. You swore an oath to enforce the laws. Please enforce the laws and quit making my dad wait.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel.
Mr. McDonald.
Thank you. This is in regards to the upcoming election and future city council members and the current ones who are sitting here today. Please be honest. There's certain people who are running for city council and who may or may not be in these seats who have actually been caught paying Black folks to introduce them to other Black folks. Now tell me what type of sense that makes when that same person who's trying to do that also votes and is against the Commission on Equity. Tell me what type of sense that makes when you ignore the Black community but want to pay out of your pocket to stay in those seats. That does not make any sense, and it's not only unjust, it's not right. It's not right for somebody to do that. And for one comment, the last city council member meeting, I mentioned Mike Seekings, but it's not only him. A lot of y'all have this issue where y'all will ignore the most vulnerable parts of your population. Mike Seekings, when you conceded in the mayoral election, you said this: I will do everything in my power to make every corner in the city as good as a place as it possibly can be. We are together. The more together we are, the better off we'll be. Now, if that statement was true, we'd be the best of friends because we'd be going out to the projects. I did a back school drive in your own projects and you was not there. So in order to actually make this city as more equitable as we can, we need to get to every corner, like you said, and make sure it's equitable. And that's what we're trying to do with the Commission on Equity. Because so often y'all ignore folks who are like me, young Black folks. When have we ever been in charge of anything in the city of Charleston? Never. We've always been the major labor force in this city, and we've never got anything as far as reparations or anything for our work and our dedication to the city. The last thing I'll say, 2 city council members have offices on the Battery, or not the Battery, but on Broad Street. Now y'all know over 60% of all enslaved Africans were drugged through that street. How can y'all sleep at night voting against the Commission on Equity, knowing every time you go to your office, you're looking at the same place? All of my ancestors on my mom and my dad's side were drugged in through this country. Tell me how you go to sleep at night knowing that out of 1 out of every 2 Black men who is in America that you know was drugged through those streets. Tell me how you sleep at night.
Thank you, sir.
And be truthful when you take those seats. Be truthful when you make these laws. And think of people like me who always been in the background of the city, but never been in those seats or never been in that seat. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, sir.
Amy Harrod. All right, we will move on to some of the comments that we received by phone and online. One person wrote that the mayor and city council should consider making the Commission on Equity, Inclusion, and Racial Conciliation a permanent commission. and that there could be no equity, inclusion, or racial efforts improved in the city without this effort. One person complained about an email conversation had by a council member and said that a lawyer should not knowingly make a false statement of fact of law to a tribunal or fail to correct a false statement of material fact. And also said that city council should provide a court order or a directive affirming the closing of roads in compliance with Title 57, and that there were 50 letters from 38 families who called the roads closed. And those were all the comments that we received.
Great. Thank you for your comments and for being with us this evening. We appreciate it. So next up, we got our petitions and communications. We have 2 appointments to code enforcement officers, Orion Harrell and Kinsey Holton, both with Stormwater Department. A motion to approve.
And can everyone use their mics when they're making the motions and
I move for
seconds?
approval.
Just so everyone at home can hear.
Councilmember Griffin. And then turn your mic back off when you're not speaking, if you would, please.
Yes, sir. I'm just wondering, we have a lot of different departments now that we're appointing code enforcement officers. What is the purpose of having so many code enforcement officers?
I think it gives a lot of flexibility in the stormwater department. Matt, you want to address that? Is there some specific function within that department that it's convenient or efficient to have a code enforcement officer appointed as well?
Sure, Mayor. So I believe for the stormwater department, we would only have, I think it's 4 with these 2 appointments. The code enforcement is typically required for ticket writing and then for court appearances. That's where the origin comes in for those requests.
So it's not like we're going to have, members of the stormwater department or members of the traffic and transportation department writing tickets for livability issues. These are specific code enforcement within those departments.
Correct. That's
Certainly,
the way I
the
understand.
stormwater officers would only be using it for writing basically violations to the actual stormwater permit for the project site.
Thank you so much.
All right. Any other questions? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next, we have a report from Katie McCain on our Resiliency and Sustainability Committee. Katie.
Thank you, Mayor Tecklenburg, and good evening, City Council. The Resilience and Sustainability Advisory Committee met on October 7th, and 12 of the 13 members were present. The first item on the agenda was the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Peninsula Flood Risk Management Study, and Dale Morris gave an update about the project that you are all very familiar with. The next item on the agenda was the new Climate Ambassador Program, and I shared that this program was recently created over the summer to help implement our climate action plan and spur community participation. These new climate leaders, we're calling ambassadors, are presenting to all sorts of community groups, clubs, schools, houses of worship, and are meeting with folks all fall through January. So if you know of any groups interested in learning more about our climate action plan or ways they can help be part of the solution, they can sign up to request an ambassador to speak at their next event online. The next item on the agenda was the mattress recycling pilot program, and it was just a progress update. So I shared that the program has been really successful, and the pilot period, which was a grant project, will end on December 31st. So we are hoping to keep the program going into FY22 budget dependent. And finally, the last item on the agenda was to consider a resolution to transition our gas-powered leaf blowers to alternatives, such as electric blowers. I shared some information about pollution associated with these machines, and I'd like to share a little bit with you tonight. So most leaf blowers are gas-powered, and they have 2-stroke engines, which are very inefficient. They actually mix the gas and oil together. There are major health issues associated with the blowing leaves and dirt in the air. This can affect air quality, lungs, and how we breathe. There's also a lot of noise and quality of life concerns. So we've actually heard from many residents who have expressed concern about the noise from leaf blowers being very loud. There are also water quality issues with fuel spillage when refueling or when mixing that gas with oil. And there's major greenhouse gas pollution too. These inefficient engines spew a whole lot of pollutants, such as carbon monoxide, smog-forming nitrous oxides, carcinogenic hydrocarbons, and other air toxins. A 2011 study from Edmonds found that the hydrocarbon emissions from a half hour of yard work are about the same as a 4,000-mile drive from Texas to Alaska in a Ford Raptor truck. Excuse me. So because of these concerns, over 100 cities across the US have enacted all types of bans and restrictions on these blowers, most in favor of electric blowers. Electric blower technology has come a really long way in the last few years, but it is still improving. The electric blowers are much quieter, they're much cleaner, and they have lower airflow. I did contact about 16 local landscaping companies for some information about how they're using blowers today. I found that some have already transitioned and some were willing to try after hearing the success of other companies. At the meeting, we also heard from a landscape company who already finds success using electric equipment. In addition, our Parks Department has been studying this issue for a few years now and has also had some great success with electric equipment. So after considering regulation options and the alternatives that are available, it was recommended to focus on a resolution rather than a ban, especially since this is a very difficult time for businesses. So this was presented to the Resilience and Sustainability Advisory Committee. I'm sure you've all had a chance to look at it, but basically the resolution would commit us to leading by example and transitioning our city leaf blowers first. It also encourages private companies to investigate those electric options and other alternatives and commit to reevaluating our progress in a year to see if any further action is needed. So that resolution was supported unanimously by the committee, and now it is before you tonight for your consideration. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great. So we have a resolution
Move
for
approval.
consideration.
Second.
Got a motion to approve and a second. Any questions? Councilmember Seekings.
Thank you,
and
Mr.
then
Mayor.
Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly, I just want to thank Ms. McCain for her hard work on this. She's been looking at this for a long time and has gone through many permutations. I think she has researched this more than anybody. And there's no better way to make a statement than to lead by example. And I think the best decision that she made in leading the Sustainability Advisory Committee was, let's lead by example. Let's not put a regulation out there. Let's show this can work. Let's show the world that we can be a city that is on the cutting edge of this and make it a better place to live. And I'm going to support this, and we'll see where this all goes. I think that 2 or 3 years from now, we'll look back and go, this was true leadership. And Katie, thank you for you and your committee for doing this. I think it's going to be very popular in the end, and you're going to see just about everyone in the world within a number of years transitioning out of 2-stroke engines to blow a few leaves down the road.
That's right. Councilmember Griffin and then Jackson.
Yeah, I'm in support of this as well. And I think that I'd like to see what it's going to cost for us to transition, to see those numbers. But, electric tools are really very similarly priced to gas. It's a little bit more difficult because you have to have batteries and chargers, and we'll have to stock up on those as well. But, we're looking at, we put in for a grant application for an electric sanitation truck. So I think we're doing great things in the city to sort of get away from gasoline powered equipment. But one thing that I would also like to see, I'm really glad you brought this up, Katie, is I've noticed that a lot of our contractors are taking their debris and actually just blowing it down into our storm water drains. And we've got to put an emphasis on that as well. I think we need to beef up the enforcement on that. I've seen both city contractors and private contractors blow large amounts of leaves down in our stormwater drains. And if there's one thing that's going to clog up, I see it just in my neighborhood. At the end of my street, I live at the end of a cul-de-sac. I've got 2 drains that all of the houses on that street have to drain to. And if those 2 drains are clogged, then the water is going to back up. So I hope that we can put an emphasis and a priority on, with livability to get on top of that as well. Thank you.
I believe that's an existing city ordinance, and there's another ticket that our new stormwater code enforcement officers could write. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yes, I totally agree with my colleagues who've spoken in favor of this. And I was just going to make the point, similar to Councilmember Griffin, that I do think that everyone considers that, you know, this is a more nuisance and a more intrusion into our urban neighborhoods, especially on the peninsula. But we have the exact same situations in every city district in our different boroughs, and I do think that it's harder to enforce. So I've had to just like drive around as I'm driving around the neighborhood and call dispatch and get somebody to come because they are blowing leaves directly into the storm drains. So I think it's got to be a citizen alert. And this is the companion to our adopted drain. People need to take seriously the fact that, you know, we have an environmental impact responsibility. And I really think that this is a great step to continue to work that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? And there was a company there. Tell me their name again, Katie, who had already made the transition.
Carolina Landscape. Does a lot of
Carolina
work downtown.
Landscaping. And he gave a great testimony about how they're saving money and it's efficient, and their customers love it. So I've made the transition myself to all electric. And if you hire a landscaping firm as a citizen, you could maybe insist that your landscaper make this switch as well. So a little peer pressure from our citizens would be a great thing. So Councilmember Saccharin, then we'll call the question.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question. And Katie, thank you for this information. And you and I have chatted before. Maybe now's not the best time to answer, but what is the city doing regarding electric vehicle, charging ports? I know there's a lot in the garages, and maybe this is the time for another meeting, and we can report that out. But I'd love to hear if we can get more of those around the city, because as you know, GM, Tesla, these companies are really pushing towards that. So eventually we're going to need more of these charging stations. So just a general question or comment, maybe for a future date.
Sounds good. I'll follow up with you.
Great. All right, on this resolution, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the ayes have it. I think Katie did send me an email the other day that for the first time, the state contract now has an electric vehicle. A lot of times we buy our vehicles through the state contract. So wasn't that the case? That's a new addition, Katie?
Yes, we'll see that next month.
Yeah. So it's going to make it easier for us to start purchasing some electric vehicles. Okay, thank you so much. Next up is our very brief report on COVID-19. Tracy McKee has some more continuing good news, I think, for us about numbers.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, council members. I'll do my best to make sure that everyone sees the beginning of the game. There we go. The COVID story continues to trend positively. Over the past 14 days in South Carolina, there's been a 48% decrease in new cases. In Charleston County, you can see that our case numbers continue to decline. At the end there, you can see we're starting to flatten out. Berkeley County is also looking very similarly, nice severe decline in new cases. Despite that decline, CDC does still have Charleston County rated as a high level of transmission, and Berkeley County is substantial. I should note that Charleston County is really at that bottom threshold of what they have as high. So that should be hopefully changing very soon, assuming that we're going to continue to trend in the right direction. You might remember last time I showed the map on the left that shows the hotspots in the United States from the New York Times. On the map on the right shows the current trend in hotspots. across the US. And I show this because last time you may remember, I talked about concern from the medical community about seeing a trend similarly to what we experienced last year. And so just as a informational kind of warning, if you will, the map on the left now shows kind of the recent trend in US temperatures. And you can see how that nicely correlates with the hotspots across the US. So I think the message here is really now is not the time to let our guard down, that we still need to watch the numbers and be cautious and careful. Vaccinations are still the path forward and our way out. This is an infographic released by DHEC last week about cases in September. It's regarding cases, hospitalizations, and deaths as related to those that are vaccinated versus unvaccinated. So we can see here that 83% of new cases were those from individuals that were not fully vaccinated. 71% of those hospitalized were not fully vaccinated, and 76% of deaths were not fully vaccinated. How are we doing in South Carolina? So 54% of eligible South Carolina residents have now been vaccinated. In Charleston County, that number is 67%, and Berkeley County, that is 56%. So a little information about booster shots. I might have to read this from up here. So, Moderna and Pfizer, if you completed the initial series at least 6 months ago, you're age 65 or older. If you're 18 and over and live in a long-term care facility, have underlying medical conditions, work in a high-risk setting, or live in high-risk settings, you are eligible for the booster. For the J&J vaccine, it's all people that are 18 or older who received a single dose. I think that's within at least 2 months after the first shot, so you can get that booster. And they also do say that you can actually get the Pfizer or Moderna if you had J&J as your first shot. So some other considerations, they encourage you to get the same booster as you got in your initial series. You can mix and match, however, but if you have underlying conditions, they do recommend that you stay with the same first original series shot. So in summary, cases have flattened after a couple months of decreasing, and those decreases were very significant. Vaccinations are still our best weapon, and use the South Carolina Vax Locator to find a provider. And I'm happy to try to answer any questions.
Great. Any questions, Councilmember Griffin?
Are we planning on having any sort of clinics like we did last time for the vaccine for the boosters? We had some, I got my shot at Arthur Christopher Gym. Are we teaming up with anybody like Fetter or anybody to do a booster clinic?
We did one for our own employees the other day when we had open enrollment. And
At open enrollment at the health fair, their booster shots were available. I know emergency management is working on a number of things, so that may be in the works, and I'm just not aware of it, but I can find out.
Lockwood Boulevard is open every day still.
Absolutely.
6 days a week. All right. Thank you, Tracy. Appreciate the update.
Sure.
All right. Next up is our License Committee report. Councilmember Gregory.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the License Committee met and we had 2 items. And the first item had to do with extending the current license period until April 30th, 2022. And the other really had more to do with us just standardizing our methods to be consistent with the state. And both of those items were voted on unanimously for approval, Mr. Mayor.
Great.
So move.
All right. Any discussion? These ordinances will get us on sync with the statewide requirement by the state legislature. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next up is our Committee on Public Safety. Councilmember Shade.
Move for approval.
Second.
The Committee on Public Safety met yesterday afternoon. All the items that are listed on here. We voted on exception E, which was for information only. And I still move that we adopt all items A through D.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion or questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next up, our Committee on Public Works, Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Committee on Public Works did meet on 4 o'clock Monday. As you see on your agenda, items A, I through 5 were passed unanimously. I want to call special attention to Barberry Woods. I know Councilman Brady's had intense interest on that, and there's some exciting potentials that our staff came up with on that one, Mr. Fountain and his team. Some exciting possibilities on a problem that's been over there for a while that I know you've been working on. So I wanted to give you a shout out on that, but it passed unanimously, and I hope it's adoption today.
Right. Yes, Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes, I'm on the board, vote for all this, but I'm telling you, King and Hughley Street is moving along, but boy, the noise I'm hearing.
Woo.
It's good noise.
I can't even sleep. I don't sleep, my grand don't
Getting any
sleep. And then, you know, the plate that they put in the streets, I mean, it's terrible. It's terrible. Permanent all day long, all night long. I don't know how they're gonna do it, how they can fix that, but the people are calling and complaining to me because I'm living on King Street right next door to them, and they call and complain about that because the plate, they don't put it down flat or nothing around, just laid on top. And when you drive over, you gotta be very careful because it's moving, and so I have to talk to them about that. But I'm gonna.
We'll ask Matt to have them check the plates. But
They're the biggest plates on
How much
earth.
longer do you think we have to endure?
It might.
Yeah, you killed it.
Probably a good time.
The light's on. There it goes. Okay, awesome. Maybe. The upside is that the road work in the center of the intersection, which is where the larger plates come into play, and you'll see what is causing the noise is they'll actually have 2 plates with a 3rd plate across the 2 plates because of the length they're bridging in the intersection. That work should be wrapped up in the next week or 2, and they should be moving out from the center of the intersection into basically the sections of King and Eugene that lead to the intersection, which are much easier platable areas. The whole project's still on track to be finished by early December. So on the upside, we are almost complete, but yes, we certainly do apologize for the noise. We wish we could work on it during the day too, but the traffic impacts would be pretty spectacular if we tried to do that. So we did talk to them on Friday even about resecuring the plates. They went back out and did the best that they could with it. It is a noisy plate to have a plate on a plate. That's what's causing those issues.
All right. Councilmember Seekings?
No, Mr. Fountain answered my question. I was just wondering when that project was going to get finished. Because I mean, Councilmember Mitchell is right. I go through that intersection every single day. They're the biggest plates in the world. They're on top of each other. It's super loud. And then of course, on top of that, there's work going on at night. So Mayor, this predates you, but when they were doing work in the very first phases of Spring Fishburne, you remember we had medical students in here every night. They said they came with us because they couldn't sleep. So we're up. It's rough. So we can keep them moving, and anything they can do to secure those plates. I don't know how you do it, but I mean, is there something they can put like some foam rubber in between or something? I mean, it seems to me there's got to be some heavy duty rubber on those corners because that's the big issue. It's those banging that goes on, and we've got more big projects coming, so we might as well practice now.
We do that. So, and you're familiar with the plate locks. The plate locks are on the edges and they're bolted in. The hard part of those plates on plates is you don't want the materials underneath to shift and then cause its own hazard for bikes and other things. But it's a difficult situation. If it wasn't quite such a broad span, you could use a single plate, but then you're not having structural safety for the trench underneath. So yes, the Parks Department keeps thanking me for having one of the most obnoxious projects in the city because it draws all the attention to stormwater for the project, but it is.
You win, congratulations.
It is very difficult to work in a major highway intersection in evening hours and have to reopen the road every day, which normally we would like to close the road, do the work and be back. And this would be a 1-month project. When you have to reset, it takes, an hour every day to take all the plates off and then an hour to put them back on in the dark. So you're working on a difficult project. There's a reason that the project hasn't been built previously. It's because it's expensive and difficult and it's very inconvenient, but it's definitely worth doing. So we're trying to get it done as quickly as we possibly can. We still expect to be done by early December, get out for the holidays and say, this is a great mission accomplished. Then second phase will be on the actual housing authority property, which will be much less inconvenient for everyone. We can work during the day and avoid those overnight hours. So certainly understand.
We're getting there. All right. Any further questions or comments? All in favor of the report from Public Works, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next, our Committee on Ways and Means.
Move for approval.
Any discussion?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next, we have 4 bills. up
1 through
for
4.
Second reading. We have a motion to approve all 4 and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember
Mr. Mayor, I'll
Griffin?
be voting against item number 2.
I'm sorry, sir.
I'll be voting against item number 2, but voting for items 1, 3, and 4.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I too am going to vote against item 2.
Item 2.
Let's separate number 2, Mr. Mayor. I amend my motion 1, 3, and 4.
1, 3, and 4. Is that a plan? We have a motion to approve 1, 3, and 4. And a second.
Second.
Any question on any of those? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Now for third reading and ratification.
So moved.
On 1, 3, and 4. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Have it. Now a motion to approve number 2. All right. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? We got a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Let's have a roll call if we will, Madam Clerk.
Oh, if you're out of town, you can't vote.
Councilmember Shealy. Councilmember Saccharin.
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes.
Councilmember Brady.
Aye.
Councilmember Gregory.
Yes.
Councilmember Waring.
Aye.
Councilmember Sinkings.
Nay.
Councilmember Shade. Councilmember Griffin.
Nay.
Councilmember Appel.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson. Mayor Tecklenburg.
Yes.
The motion carries.
All right. And now for third reading and ratification. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Were any different votes than before? All right. Thank you all very much. Now we have 1 bill up for first reading, zoning change for 3030 Maybach
Move for
Highway.
approval.
We got a motion to approve. Any discussion on this one?
Second.
We got a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. The next regular meeting. Oh, I thought we did. They beat you to the punch.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Griffin.
I have a very, very serious issue that we need to discuss that may take up an extended amount of time. Go Braves.
Go Braves. We prayed for them. We cheered them on. Y'all, pardon me, I just have to sign these up before the meeting ends. And one more. Make these official. What time is the game tonight? 8:08. Okay. And hey, you've even got time to get over to the Joe to hear the opera. La Traviata starts in 8 minutes. There'll probably be a 5-minute grace period. Is there any further business to come before us tonight? If not, we